Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to InSpiritTruthCenter. I am, as Rev Deb said, Reverend Terry Thompson, and it is my honor to be able to address you today. And as we do each time that we come together, I'd like to remind you that you are living truth, a unique, individualized expression of absolute truth. But that's only the potential of what you are and what you can be. In order for you to fully recognize the divinity that you truly are, you must be living truth each and every day. Well, today our topic is, what do you see? And this topic actually is going to be something that's rather personal for me because it has to do with my own personal journey and some things that have come to me lately. But before I get into that, I want to read one of the scriptures that we're going to be using today, which is coming from Genesis chapter 13, verses 14 through 15. And it reads from the Lambda Aramaic translation. And the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, eastward and westward. For all the land which you see, to you will I give it, and to your descendants forever. In Spirit family, we have Abram, known as the Exalted Father, who left his home at age 75 to go out on a dream that had come to him by God. And at some point, God told him to lift his eyes up and to look around him, and that everything that he saw would be his. Abram went on to become Abraham, who was no longer the exalted father, but the father of nations, the father of three major religions: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So the question that I have for you today in Spirit family is, when you lift your eyes up, when you look around you, what do you see? As I said, this lesson today is going to be a bit personal for me because for the past 6 or 7 months, I've been working on refinancing a mortgage. It's on a commercial building that Reverend Sharon and I own in New York. And we've had this mortgage for about 10 years. It's come due. Now, because of some issues that we have with our credit, and I'm sure some of you probably will understand that, we had some issues that came up. We had some issues that came up for us from some real estate transactions that we had done in 2007. There were some foreclosures. There were some things that negatively impacted our credit. So we've been going to different lenders trying to get someone to give us a loan. And everywhere we went, nobody would bite. And it's a different landscape from what it was when we got this mortgage 10 years ago, where they did not rely so much on your personal credit, although at the time my personal credit was very good. But now, because of what happened with foreclosures and with the crisis that was in real estate from 2007 to 2009, they check everything carefully, even on buildings where it doesn't seem like it makes sense. And the only thing that I seem to have been able to find was something called a loan from a hard money lender. Does anybody here know what a hard money lender is? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what a hard money lender is. A hard money lender lends you money on terms that are hard. We back up? No, not yet. Okay, well, I'm going to roll without it if I can, because I think I don't have a Jehudi voice, but I've got a voice that I think can kind of project out a little bit, so I'm going to project some. So the terms are hard. What they'll do is they'll charge you something like 3 or 4 points up front. They will give you an interest rate that's going to be somewhere around 13 to 17%. And the loan is only going to be for 1 year, and you've got to turn right back around and try to do it again. Now, I've had this loan for 10 years. It was a 5-year loan at about, I think originally it was at about 4.5%. and there was an option to renew for a second 5-year term. We have it now at about 4.65, I think. Big difference between 4.65 and 13 to 17%. And one of the issues that I'm having with this is that the property is a good property. It cash flows. It's got sufficient cash flow to cover the mortgage we now have. But the lender has decided that they will not extend the loan to us. For whatever reason, they're going to want to move on. So I've been around, looking around, and all that we could find are these hard money lenders. So in order for us to move things along, I had to start the process with them, pay these people $2,500 in order to get a commitment so that I could get a 3-month extension to be able to close the loan. That 3-month extension happened on December 1st, and it just expired on March 1st. I'm still looking. I was able at some point to come across somebody that could do the loan for us somewhere around 7%. And just at the time that my commitment ran out, I came across somebody that said that they might be able to find a bank that could do it for us at 4%. So during this time, I'm working and I'm getting frustrated, I'm getting angry, dealing with the different issues that I've got to deal with to get this refinance. And at some point, I had to take a step back and take a look at myself. And of course, I got a bit of a nudge from my wife. Where's your faith? What do you believe? What is it that you're looking at that's making this process not work out properly? And I had to say to myself, do I really believe that we're going to refinance this loan on terms that are going to work for us, or do I believe something else? And so I had to ask myself, what is it that you're looking at when you see this loan? In your mind and in your heart, when you think about this loan and you affirm what it is that you need to do to get this loan to work, what do you see? And all that I was really able to see were the things that I was hearing from the different brokers, and I talked to a number of them. I talked to probably about 10 of them, and they all said the same thing. With your credit, there's nothing I can do for you. So when I had this hard money lender come along to me, they're like, well, you should be happy. You should be happy that you've got somebody. As a matter of fact, we're doing you a favor. And I'm saying to myself, I'm feeling like I'm getting done without any lubrication, and you're going to come back and do me again in a year. But because I have a wife who is a person of faith and of strong faith, she wouldn't let it go. And she would say to me, what do you believe? What is it that you're seeing for us? How is it that you're seeing this loan work? And I had to take a step back and say to myself, you're not really seeing this loan rightly because you are focused on what these people are telling you instead of the truth that you know to be true. And that's one thing that I want you to understand. It's not the truth that you know, but it's the truth that you use that makes the difference in your life. You can know all the truth you want to know, but if you don't use that truth, it's not doing you a doggone bit of good. So in getting ready to prepare this lesson, my thoughts went back, way back, probably for some of you even before you were born, back to the late 60s, the early 70s, to a comedian named Flip Wilson. And Flip had this character named Geraldine. And for those of you who had a chance to see Geraldine, Geraldine was what we would call today a hot mess. Geraldine was proud. Geraldine was flirtatious. Geraldine was sassy. And amongst the many things that she became known for, one of her sayings was when she'd start to get in a little bit of trouble, the devil made me do it. But the thing that really came to me is when Geraldine would say, what you see is what you get. Let's affirm that together. What you see is what you get. Once again, what you see is what you get. Because the truth is, what you see is what you get. And the thing that you need to understand is what you see is not necessarily what you see with the physical eyes. It's what you see with the spiritual eyes. It's what you imagine, what you go over in your mind day after day, month after month, year after year, that sinks down into your subconscious mind. And that through the law of cause and effect, affects what you see, affects what you experience, affects what comes into your life. When I say what you see, I don't necessarily mean what you see only visually in your imagination. I mean the thoughts that you think. I mean that little voice that talks to you, that tells you things about yourself that nobody can hear. That voice that tells you you're not any good. That voice that tells you you're scared, that you're afraid. That conjures up those images in your mind that affects the way that you see the world. So our lesson today is going to be, what do you see? And if you don't like what you see, how can you change it? So I'm going to be working with a few scriptures today, and one of them I've given to you already. I'm going to give you another one, and that's where I'm going to start. It's coming from Matthew, chapter 6, verses 22 through 23, and it reads, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If therefore your eye be bright, your whole body is also lighted. But if your eye is diseased, your whole body will be dark. And if therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how much greater will be your darkness?" In Spirit family, I had to realize that my eye was diseased. And I needed to get some spiritual medicine to address the disease of how I saw the world and how I've been seeing this loan. You see, when we talk about the eye, especially in this scripture, again, it has to do with our imaginations, with the way that we see ourselves, our intimate thoughts, the things that we say to ourselves that nobody can hear, and even the messages that we get from the outside world and how we internalize them and how they become a part of our subconscious minds. And that is what creates the reality that we experience every day. The ancients believed that the eye was like a lamp or a candle, that it projected out. So hence we have this metaphor that Jesus is giving to us about the lamp and our eyes casting out a light. But Jesus wasn't really talking about a physical eye. He was talking about the spiritual eye that I'm speaking of. And he was saying that this eye is what comes from within us, what comes from within our souls, what comes from within our consciousness. And that if our consciousness is bright and clear, or as King James in the King James Version put it, that we have a single eye, that it's clear, then our body, which is the manifestation of everything around us, our consciousness, our physical world, that will be illuminated with light. But if our thoughts, our imagination, what's emanating from our souls is full of darkness, then our experiences are going to be dark. And so I'm taking a look at this loan and the different problems that I'm having with it. I first took a look at the way that I had to react to it when I had people asking me to get together information to submit for this loan. And because I was angry, I dragged my feet about putting things together and getting everything together that I needed to do. So I'm not coming from a place of, let's get this done. I know we can do it. I'm coming from a place of, it shouldn't have to be like this. I'm coming from a place of, this should be easy. I'm coming from a place of, I don't like the way that this is going, and I'm going to show you. But see, I'm not showing anybody but myself, because it's making the process drag on and on and on. So at some point, I had to get off of whatever horse I was riding and start to face reality. This is not these people's problem, it's mine. And this is a problem of consciousness, of where I am in consciousness, because what you see is what you get. So I had to start telling myself, today I've got to start seeing something different. And I've got to start looking at this loan differently, and I've got to start looking at my circumstances differently. Because, Terry, you ain't in Kansas anymore. You someplace off in a far country. And you're going to have to work with what it is that you see. So I'm starting to work in consciousness, and I'm starting to realize I've got this diseased eye, this eye that's not seeing clearly, and that I need to clear it up, that the darkness is coming from me. So I started to put together the things that I needed to put together to give to the people for them to get the loan put together. And I would submit information, and then they'd come back and ask me for something else. And some of the information that they were asking me about just didn't make sense. You know, they'd ask me about this thing or that thing, and I'd give them answers, and they'd come back and ask me something else. And then they would run my credit report, and there were things on my credit report that didn't belong there. So I've got to go and take care of these things to fix them. And all of these things, all while I'm working on it, I'm trying to get in my mind and get in my consciousness what it is that I want to have. As I told you, I had this hard money lender, and he was chomping at the bit to give me a loan. Because the thing about hard money lenders is that if you don't pay them, they have no problem foreclosing on you. And the property that I have, it's a property in New York, is appraised at about $1 million. The amount that I need to refinance is less than half of that. So this guy's like, this is win-win for me. Because I'm charging this man 3-4 points up front. So I'm going to get about $50,000, $60,000 right up front. And I'll be nice, I'll roll it up in the loan. But I'm going to get my money up front. And you know what? We can do it again in a year, that you can give me another 3 or 4 points. So I'm feeling closed in, and I'm having trouble seeing anything but these big numbers in front of me. And I'm feeling discouraged and depressed. And I get a phone call from someone who says, I can take a look at it. I can take a look at doing the loan for you. And I'm like, why even try? I'm tired of hearing no. And Reverend Sharon jumped on my case like white on rice. What do you mean you don't want to do this? Honey, baby, I'm tired of getting beat down. I am tired of these people telling me no and trying to convince people that they should do stuff that they should be doing. And she said, you know what? Where is your faith? I don't care if you've got to talk to I don't care if you've spoken to 999 people. When number 1,000 comes along, you talk to them too. And the thing that's bad about it is that she didn't tell me anything that I didn't know. If one of you were to come to me with the same thing, I would say the same thing to you. You got to keep going until you get to where you need to be. That's what faith is all about. So I found this person, and he said, you know what, I think that I can do this for you at about 7%. And we started the process, and it turned out that he could. But I still wasn't happy with that. You know, they changed the terms on me a little bit. They wanted to do it about 7 3/4. The points were a lot less, but they were only going to lend a certain amount of money, and that meant that I'd have to come out of my pocket with it. And I said, you know, it is better, and I'm grateful that I've got something better, but God, I'm still not happy with this. Because this is not the way things should be. It's not the way that my life should be at this point. And right around the beginning of this month, I got a call from someone who was the friend of a broker that I had originally approached. And I explained to him where I was, and he said, well, I've got a bank that I think can do it for you at around 4%. And on top of it, they'll be willing to lend you a larger amount of money so we can roll these closing costs up into whatever it is that you borrow. So, hey, I'm feeling good about this now. And I've got the paperwork already pretty much put together, so I give it to him, and he processes the loan fairly quickly. But then I get some pushback there. And where I am now is I've got the 7% loan that they're ready to close and they're asking me, what do you want to do? And I've got the 4% loan where they're like, maybe, but we don't know yet. And so as we speak today, I'm in a position where I'm having to keep my vision clear about what it is that I want and have faith, have belief that things are going to work out whichever way that things go. So either way that it goes for me, I know that it's going to be the best and for my highest and greatest good, whichever way it is that it's going to work out. But I also recognize that I still have work to do, and that work that I need to do is what's preventing me from getting the answer that I seek. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to spend the rest of the time that we've got together talking about when you see things that you don't like, what you can do to change what you see, so that what you see is what you want, and what you want is what you get. So let's come back to the first scripture that I talked to you about, where God told Abram to lift up his eyes and to look all around him to the north, the south, the east, and the west, and that everything that he saw, that God would give to him. The most important part of that scripture is it says, and the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him. Now you may be asking yourself, why is Lot so important? Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm going to tell you. It's important because Lot represents that state of consciousness that I was bringing into this situation with the mortgage. You see, when you understand about the relationship between Lot and Abram, it tells you a lot about your own thinking and what it is that you need to do. Lot was Abram's nephew, although I believe that they were pretty close in age. At the time that God said to Abram, pick up everything that you have at age 75, and I want you to go to a brand new country, and that's where you're going to find your blessing. Abram took his wife Sarai, he took his nephew Lot, he took all of his possessions, and he took his servants, and they broke out. And it seemed like with everything that they did, that there was a problem with him and Lot. Not personally, but with their people. Both of their herds got to be so big, and their people started fighting with one another. It's like, we don't have enough that we can't share this land together, so you're going to have to go your way, and I'll go my way. And they separated from one another. Now, Lot, as you remember, is the one who ended up in Sodom and Gomorrah, and we all know what happened to that place. Lot had the consciousness that we all have, that when we go into something and we step out on faith, that we carry along with us that old negative thinking, that old consciousness, that old way of doing things. And as our consciousness is expanding in faith, those thoughts, those doubts, those things start to come to the surface, and they expand right on along with it. So we find ourselves in a situation where we're in a new country, and things are strange, we're uncomfortable because we don't know the people, we don't know the terrain. And that's what happens when you step out to do something new, and you're in a period of growth. You're in something new, you're in a strange country, or it feels that way because you're in unfamiliar ground. You're working with things, you're having to do things that you've never had to do. You're seeing things that you never had to see before, and you don't know exactly what to do with it. And along comes that Lot thinking, well, you know, back in the old days, we used to do it this way, let's try that. Except in the things that you did before don't work anymore. And you're finding it difficult for you to move on. So you fall back on what it is that you can see. You look at the circumstances, and the circumstances start to persuade you that you can't do any differently. Now contrast that to Abram, who was a man of faith. When God told Abram to jump, Abram was like, okay, how high? There was never any hesitation with Abram in anything that God told him to do. When God said, get busy, pick up your stuff and go, Abram packed up his stuff immediately and left. And that's the difference that I noticed in myself when I had this mortgage issue to deal with and what I should have been doing. I knew what I had to do, but did I do it? No. Because I had a whole lot of other things that were pressing, and I felt like I shouldn't have to do it. I'm living in this lot consciousness. And what you see is what you get. So I'm not getting back the results that I'd like to get, but I'm getting out what I'm putting out into the universe. And at some point, that when the consciousness is expanding with faith, and that old consciousness that is used to doing things in a certain way start to expand, and they get into conflict, we've got to make a decision which way we're going to go. Are we going to go and dwell in the plains of Jordan as Lot did, those flat level places that's a low state of consciousness? Or are we going to move someplace that's going to move us up higher, that's going to give us the vision and the results that we want to see? And I had to let go of that Lot thinking and start to think like Abram and say, God, what do I need to do? What's next? So I started letting go of the Lot thinking and doing the things that I needed to do. And this process began to move along more favorably and the way that I'd like it. I ended up getting back in touch with a hard money lender. Actually, they contacted me and I said, you know, I appreciate what you've done for me, but I don't think I'm going to need you, and if I do, I'll get back to you, but I think I'm good. So I let them go on their way. And at a certain point, I had to take a look at myself and the things that I was doing. My environment, the thoughts that I was thinking, the things that I was doing, what I was looking at, and what images that it was conjuring up in my mind. And I began to realize that I was not managing any of those things very well. So what I'd like to talk with you about a little bit is your environment. Because, you know, we all have an environment we live in. And the question comes up that, does the environment make me, or do I make the environment? Now, as metaphysicians, we know that our environment is a reflection of consciousness. So ultimately, we create the environment that we're in. But if we're not aware of that, and we believe that our environment creates us, we may place ourselves in situations and circumstances that are not for our highest and our greatest good. So now, if you take a look at your environment, I mean, mine was filled with clutter. It was filled with a lot of things that were left undone. And I had to start to get to the point that I had to focus and create priorities around the things that I needed to do. Take a look at things that are going on around you and in your environment. Is your environment conducive to the good that you desire? Do you have people that are in your environment that are building you up? Or do you have people in your environment that are tearing you down? Do you have people in your environment that are like, child, it's hard out here. It ain't no good men. Or the men that are saying it's hard to find a good woman. If that's what you've got going in your ear and you're out looking for a mate, you need to cut those people loose. Or you need to find yourself a way to insulate yourself from what they're putting out there, because at a certain point, you start to take this in. You see, you affect your environment, and your environment affects you to the extent that you let it. We all come from a certain environment that we're raised in a certain situation that, at least in this lifetime, we didn't choose. And it has an effect on us. When you look at me, you see an African-American man. I grew up in an African-American background in South Jamaica, New York. And there are things about that background that have influenced the person that I've become. But they've only influenced. They did not totally make the person that I am today. I've had a chance to see this firsthand, where the environment does not necessarily make the person. Because you can take a person who said that they desire something, put them in the perfect environment, and they still can't make it work, because they have not developed the consciousness to have the things that they say they want to have. Look at people who hit the lottery. Broke, busted, can't be trusted before they hit the lottery. They hit for millions and millions of dollars, and 5, 10 years later, they're back to being broke, busted, and can't be trusted because they did not know how to handle the money because they did not have the consciousness for it. So environment alone is not going to make you who you need to be. But that does not mean that you do not pay attention to your environment and that you do not manipulate the environment to make it work for you. So if you've got things in your environment that aren't working for you, you need to clean it up. You need to change your environment so it is a reflection of who it is that you desire to be. So that means that if you want to be a business executive, for example, you stop wearing those party clothes that you go out clubbing out on Friday nights and Saturday nights and get yourself some business attire. If you want to have money and you want to be a millionaire, stop crying poor mouth. I'll tell you a little story about something, digressing a little bit. When I lived in New York, I had this Jewish friend named Penny. And this was during the 80s when they had one of the economic downturns. And we were having a conversation. I think at the time I was probably in my early 30s, and she was 40-ish, getting close to 50. Her husband had been working for this big investment company as a software programmer. And he was one of the people that got laid off when Wall Street took a downturn. And he managed to find a job at Metropolitan Life in their IT department. He was working for a guy that she told me that had it been his place, he wouldn't even have considered the guy because he considered his ability so much more beyond what this guy was able to do. So he's frustrated with not being able to express himself the way that he'd like to. He's frustrated because he's not getting the money that he'd like to be paid. He's just frustrated all around. And she said, one day he told me, honey, you know what we need? And I can't say it exactly the way that she said it because we're in church. So I'm going to say, we need some forget about you money. Forget about you money? What kind of money is that? That's the kind of money that when the boss pisses you off, you walk into his office and you say, forget about you. And you turn around and walk out. So for the longest time, Reverend Sharon and I have been working on getting ourselves some forget about you money. And we got to the point that she had an experience with her boss where he tried to intimidate her and make her feel like that he was going to pull his weight over her. And she looked at him and she said, forget about you. And she turned around and walked out. And the people in her company applauded her. She actually literally got a standing ovation. She picked up her bag and walked out. And it took the big boss calling her up to ask her to come back in. Would she please come back in that he would take care of the guy that she was working for? And as she told me, the big boss ripped her boss a brand new one. And when she came back, she got a standing ovation. It took her a couple of weeks, and he said to her, you know, take as much time as you need. As a matter of fact, we will continue to pay you your full salary until you come back. See, having some forget about you money gives you options. It's not going to make you a better person than anybody else. But you're in a position where you've got options to be able to say to people, forget about you if you don't like what it is that they're telling you. And so I'm going to encourage every one of you to get you some forget about you money. You see, we shouldn't be working out here as hard as we do for everybody else and not making sure that we're taken care of. And we have been in a position where actually both of us were at a point that we did not have to work a regular job. And because of mismanagement of the resources that we had and a number of bad decisions and me not taking care of things that I should have taken care of, we had these foreclosures and we had these other things. It wasn't that we were speculating, we just made some bad choices. where we had properties that should have been working for us, but we didn't understand the economy here in Atlanta. We didn't understand the mindset, very different than in New York. And so we made decisions about things that would have worked perfectly fine in New York, but did not apply here. So it was a learning experience for us, and hence, I'm in the situation that I'm in now. So I'm back to work, and she's still working, and we're working on getting back to having some forget about you money. And you see, at some point, you've got to learn to let go of what's come before you and where you are now. Another scripture that I'm going to share with you comes from Matthew chapter 18, verse 18. And it reads, "Truly I say to you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you release on earth will be released in heaven." Well, see, I bound up on earth all of this frustration and anger and appearances, and it's got me spiritually bound up where I've got this energy that's just bound up tight, that's not letting anything come in. And I've actually felt it, physically felt it when I've let go of certain things. I've actually felt the energy release, and I felt something different in my body. And in Spirit family, I can tell you, and I know I'm going on pretty long, I'm way, way past even where Jehudi does, so I'm going to wrap this up soon. But if you're experiencing health challenges, metaphysically, health challenges are a lack of forgiveness and a holding on to things that are not serving you. And if you're experiencing health challenges, if you're stuck in any situation where you're not moving forward, you need to take a look in your mind and in your heart and ask yourself, what do I need to let go of? Who is it that I need to forgive? What is it that I'm tying up? What am I binding here on earth that it's binding on in heaven that's keeping my good from flowing to me? And I guarantee you that when you release that thing and you unbind it, it will release that spiritual energy so that things can start to flow in your life. So the last thing that I'm going to say to you is that whatever your vision is, make sure that your vision is in alignment to the good that you desire. If you desire to have health, if you desire to lose weight, don't sit down and watch Empire and consume a gallon of ice cream while you're watching it. The two just don't work together. We have to make sure that our desires, our actions, our thoughts are all lined up together. And if they don't line up together, you're going to experience something that you don't want to have. Put your house in order. Get things in order, get things straight with how you need to do them. Get your priorities straight. And when you do, when you have your desires, your actions, and your thoughts in alignment, then things will begin to flow for you. Because as Geraldine would say, what you see is what you get. Don't go around talking about the devil made me do it, because it's not the devil. It's only the devil in your consciousness that's making you do it. It's what you see is what you get. So get the good that you desire by seeing the good that you desire. Have a wonderful week, everybody. It's good to see you again.